Welcome to Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance, where we uncover the powerful truth about your beginnings and how they've shaped your entire life. I'm Shannon O'Flaherty, and in this show, we are not just exploring your birth, we are dismantling the chains of generational trauma. We're diving into the core of who you are, peeling back layers of inherited beliefs and behaviors that have held you back for far too long. This isn't just about understanding your past. It is about reclaiming your future. Get ready to break free. This is Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance, and your transformation starts now.
Hey, everybody, welcome. I'm Dr. Pat, and I get to take this journey with the most amazing Shannon O'Flaherty. And let me just say this. There's so much. I could spend the entire 30 minutes just talking about Shannon. I really could. But what I want to say is during this show, you'll get to learn about who she is, what her passion and purpose is, but even more, what it's like to go through life, not even know that you have birth trauma. It is really a thing, and most of us do have it. Now, maybe there are one or two of you out there that don't, and I'm just going to say, praise the Lord to you people. Just going to say it to you. But for the most part, what happens when you go through life and you don't understand this fundamental dynamic? This is not just a purpose and a passion for Shannon, but her healing work is so profoundly deep and goes beyond what you can imagine. It goes into the many, many layers that sometimes we have to look at in order for us to figure out what the bleep is going on. Shannon, great to have you here. Thank you for this fabulous show. I've gotten to work with you now for several weeks. Love that opener, love that music. And wow, how does it feel? How does it feel to be here now doing this like now?
It's very exciting. I feel very psyched that I have this platform so that I can reach more people and help people understand why they might be struggling and feel stuck in life. Because there's so many unasked questions and there's so many unanswered questions as well. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
You know, just to give you a quick example, and then I want to ask you what led you here. But let me just give you a quick example of something that I do believe stems way back. And so there are some of us that we make decisions, especially as business people, and it's often difficult to really look at a business decision and say that was the wrong decision and then do something to reverse it. I just had something this morning with some new desks we're ordering. And this may seem benign, but no, this is a pattern. And I caught myself. Why? Because I'm doing the show with you. So I prepared for it. And I thought, I'm not happy with this order. I'm not happy with the vendor. It's a lot of money. Cancel it. See, the other part of me wouldn't cancel it. We would just kind of float along. But this morning I did something unusual. And I said to them very clearly, this is not what we agreed to. You didn't ship the order, cancel it. And I don't know that I would have done that if I was not a little bit more aware of some of the stuff that I bring with me. And I wanted to ask you this. Here you are helping so many people. You must have been, maybe like a lot of us, tapped by some sort of crisis, something that happened where you said, I am going to create a new pathway for me, and it's a healing pathway. What was it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of healers, they're called the wounded healer because most people have some kind of crisis in their life that wakes them up to a new way of being, or they think life can't just be about this. And I can't say it was any one thing exactly, but I don't know if you know about Dark Night of the Soul, but I had my first Dark Night of the Soul when I was 37 years old. And even though on the surface everything looked great, I had a beautiful husband, lovely house, fabulous kids, and I was a very happy person. I told everybody, but I wasn't. I felt despairing. Every morning I would wake up with a deep pit of despair in my gut and feeling guilty and wondering, why did I feel this way? I wasn't a bad person. I was actually quite one of the good girls growing up, right? And so a dark night is really how I understand it is when your main a guardian angel leaves you and steps out to create room for another guardian angel to come in. And often at this time, people commit suicide, all sorts of stuff, because you feel desperately alone. And I felt desperately alone and that there was no hope. You're in a dark tunnel with no light at the end. And I got through that time, and then I thought I need to make a change. And I did seek out people to tell me their stories because hearing people's stories puts your own really in perspective because somebody always has a worse story than yours, right? So I was led to start to study transactional analysis, which is, I went back to school at 37 and started to study. And that really woke me up. And then that led further on down the line to many more studies after that.
Thank you so much for sharing it because I want people to know that, let me just talk about this. When you say I went back to study, let me just tell you a little bit about what Shannon's talking about. Went back to studying transactional analysis, occupational TANLP, psychic development, and many, many other things, hypnosis, hypnotherapy, and then the Shaman School of Theta Healing, and much more. And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because a lot of times people don't understand that when we go through this, it's also part of, do I dare say, beyond birth trauma stuff, beyond birth trauma situations, right? Which we're going to talk about
Yeah.
today. But
Yeah.
it's interesting. 37, you and I at 37, we weren't 37 at the same time, but 37, that was a little kicker for me too. But it took me 3 years for me to draw a line in the sand. Can we talk about that for a little bit? Because it really points to why beyond birth trauma, some of us may take a little longer to figure it out. Clearly, for me, doing it on my own,
Mhm.
I often think about if I knew the people, let's say I knew you then, right? I often think about what kind of support or help would I have gotten so that, what did you call it? That in between stage where my archangel or my angel
Yeah.
went on vacation, waiting for the new one to come in. I really didn't want that to be 6 years. But, but you see, let's talk about that because I couldn't figure it out. So beyond birth trauma really helps people peel it back.
It,
Look at those things. Tell us what you discovered about why that became important for you.
so, I mean, you've talked about many possible avenues of discussion here. I think everything happens in divine time. And if everybody could accept that now and stop saying, oh, I should be along further than I am now, and why didn't this happen before? Just it's all divine and perfect timing because we all have different soul contracts, is why we're here. And so I think I was a little bit of a late bloomer, a little slow because I had a lot of passions. I was raising kids. So depending on what you're doing. And because of what our parents have modeled to us from the outset, you might be on a path trying to live your purpose for your parents' approval without even knowing it. So I know a lot of people whose parents have died and they've suddenly left their law career or stopped being a doctor and went off to become a graphic artist because that's what they really wanted to do. But while their parents were alive, they had to stay and please their parents. Now, this is not necessarily conscious, right? It's subconscious. So a lot comes from the modeling of what your parents have instilled in us in the first place. And what they learned and how they behaved came from their parents. So the first day of transactional analysis, actually, they told us to write down, tune in, and write down what was your mother feeling when she was pregnant with you. And a lot of people thought, well, how on earth should I know? And I kind of knew part of my birth story at that point, but I just tuned into my mother and I wrote down something like, I don't remember, I'm trapped, frustrated, and alone, or something like that. And she happened to be visiting me at the time in England, and I went home. And before telling her what I wrote on my paper, I said, Mom, what did you feel like when you were pregnant with me? And she said the exact sentence that I had written on the paper. And I was like, whoa. She said, why did you ask that? And I handed her this piece of paper, and she's like, how did you know that? I'm like, this is what we're asked to tune into. Now, in my mind, I had made up certain reasons why she would have felt that way. And then I heard the story and heard her reasons for why she felt that way. But nevertheless, I still got the core emotions. And why, even in mainstream psychology, they asked us this is because we are products of our parents. We hold 7 generations of cellular memory in us. And so we think that oh, I don't want to be like my mother. I don't want to be like my father. But surprise, we are. We're just like them. And we're either going to repeat the same problems and patterns, or we're going to completely break the cycle and do something opposite of that to balance it, right? Did
You
that answer
know,
the
I
question?
cannot believe you just said that. I cannot believe it because I just didn't put it together. What do you think happened to me in 1987? And this is so to your point. My dad died.
Mm.
My dad died, passed away. And when my dad passed away, my stepmom handed me letters from my birth mom because basically what happened to my birth mom was an anomaly. But you see, what you just described, I fit that mold, like corporate, knocking myself out, high achiever, call dad. What's dad's first question, Shannon? What do you think my dad asked me? His first question. No, no, honey, not how are you? No. How much
Yeah.
money you make?
Yeah,
How
I
much
was
money
just
you
going
make?
to say
That's
how
like
much money
that's
you
how much
make.
money every call.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and then he passed away. And I don't know the underpinnings of how this works, but you do. There's not enough time on the show to talk about it, but I will tell you from that moment on, everything changed for me. My job didn't look the same. The money didn't look the same. The relationships didn't look the same. My behavior was abhorrent. So these are the things that if we knew exactly what you talked about, the 7 generations, did you say?
Mhm.
We could do something about it, can't we?
Well, we absolutely can because in every family, there's a familial baseline of emotion that's running through the family. And it can be anger, it can be shame, it can be loss, grief, whatever. In my family, it was sadness and it was shame. And so because my great grandma, one of those grandmothers, she had, so great grandmother, I think she had lost 7 babies, right? Birthed 7 babies, and they all starved to death because she wasn't producing enough milk. And finally, my grandfather, the 8th child, lived. But could you imagine losing 7 children in a row? I
No.
mean, that's a lot of grief. That's a lot of loss. And then my grandfather was born, and then my mother was born in the Depression in the States. So she was raised in the time of the Depression. So there was a lot of sadness around that. And all of the other stuff that goes on in families add up to the other elements that the main underlying core of that can be sadness and shame. Now, I grew up with really interesting, artsy parents, and it didn't seem like everything was sad and shameful at all, but the underlying subconscious, stealthy kind of emotions under there was sadness and shame. And so my default programming, like I don't get angry about things, I get sad about things. When things really affect me and other people are angry, anger comes later for me. I get sad. And because I'm connected to the earth and the world and humanity, I get sad for the collective. I get
Mm.
sad, and I don't have enough loss and sadness in my life to warrant feeling sad and grief. Everybody's died in the order of things in my family. I haven't lost too many people, right? There hasn't been tragedy and all of that. So why would I be such a sad person, right? I had to question these things. And when you start to unpick, you realize your existence, we wouldn't all be here if it wasn't for our ancestors, right? They were the pioneers. And cellular memory gets passed down. That's where we get fear from and prejudice and all sorts of
Yeah.
crazy belief systems that no longer are really necessary.
Yeah, and what you do, Shannon, is that you enter a realm which really I wish the world of psychology, let me just call it like that, did more of. But what
Mhm.
you do is you enter this, psycho-spiritual realm, this world to understand what is my birth blueprint. What is the mark?
Yeah.
Besides the mole behind my ear right here, what what has been left? And so many of us didn't know about our birth or our history, but I will tell you what I did know about my mom: depressed, committed suicide, right? So I'm a lot like you, but none of it would make sense to me without knowing you. None of it would make sense to me at all. And I would just trudge along, and you trudge along in your life. So I want to ask you, now that we know this, I want to ask you about the birth imprint. But before we do that, you work with people all over the world. All of you listening to this show, if you're thinking, oh, I don't feel anger either. If you really want to understand this and change something, what is the best way for people, Shannon, to work with you? How do they find more about this work that you're doing?
Yeah. So the best thing would be to go to my website, shannonbtb.com or shannonoflaherty.com, but either or, and book a free 20-minute mind shift call. Because in 20 minutes, I love to talk to people, and maybe I'm not the right therapist for you. I think you've got to have a really good dance with whoever you're working with. But book a free call. Let's find out. I can in 20 minutes you might have a big aha moment which could change the rest of your life. Or you might think, yeah, let's dive in deep. Let's go deeper. And so let's find out what we can find out together in 20 minutes. Let's see if we're a good fit to work together and see if we can discover something in 20 minutes, because oftentimes people are really grateful for just that time. And a little awareness goes a long way.
No kidding. I am acutely aware of things since I've met you. I want to talk about the birth imprint because one of the things I've noticed, especially in the work that I do, is I've noticed what has gotten uncovered for people. And you talk about the dark night, and it looks like for a lot of people, even though they're not like running around saying I'm one of them, the pandemic caused a lot of, for lack of a professional term, stuff to show up, right?
Yeah.
And things to show up that are all part of what you're talking about here today. There's not enough time in this episode to really get into it, but I know
Mhm.
in future shows we'll take a look. Can you imagine now entire global impact of people being put in a situation which probably hit some nerves that they had not experienced before or in a long time? So, did they get aware of some kind of blueprint or imprint? Let's talk about that birth imprint and how things may show up in times of crisis, or if our angels decide they're going on vacation for a couple of weeks or months or years.
So, depending on what was happening for you in utero, because it starts when you're in utero. So, I'll tell my story very quickly. My mother was about 3 months pregnant with me and went to a gynecological appointment. And on the way out, somebody saw her bleeding down the street, and she had started to miscarry me. And she turned right around and went back in, and the doctor stood her on her head and he said, "Your uterus is tipped." I have an older sister, so her uterus had gotten tipped out of place. And he said, "I encourage you to miscarry this baby and try again." And she said, "No, absolutely not. I'm having this one." And so She had to stand on her head every hour on the hour for the rest of her pregnancy, stay in bed. So me, the baby, because me, the baby, the soul probably thought, no, not a good plan. Change my mind. Don't want these parents. I'm out of here. Me, the baby, was trapped in utero, couldn't get out. And then when I finally was ready to come out, I decided to come right out. And she was on the trolley, um, kind of on the way to delivery, and a panicked nurse held me in. And so I got sick. Yeah, I know. Got sick, swallowed all of this stuff. And so then me, the baby, was like, well, hold on. I'm trapped and now I can't get out. And then all 10 pounds of me, my poor mother, was put in an incubator for 2 or 3 days. So I wasn't held immediately. Right. So this sets up all sorts of things. Trapped. There's my mother's I'm trapped. I'm trapped. Can't get out. So I'm very impatient. Don't put me in a traffic jam. Oh my God. Or small spaces. I'm not highly claustrophobic, but I really want my freedom. And I'll go first. I'll go first. I'm always first. The people who know me will be laughing because they're like, oh, yeah. Trusting authority, yeah, not so much. Because it's like, come on, can you see all of the patterns that are set up there? And then the not being held thing, even though intellectually I know that my parents wanted me and that my mother chose to have me, because I wasn't held, suddenly I had that abandonment thing going on. So I felt like I was never held, seen, wanted, heard, lots of stuff to overcome. So my natural inclination in life has to, yeah, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. Once your birth imprint sets you up, you then respond that way. And also what happens in those first couple of formative years of your life. Does
You,
that give
you,
you enough of an
well,
idea of?
no, I'll tell you what it does. What you just described is a huge awakening for people that are mysteriously left in awe about not understanding their lives.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, OMG, again. This people say this. They're like, oh, again, I'm doing that again. But you see, what you described, we don't have time during this show, but I could point out 10 different things you've said just in that last segment
Yeah.
that point to how that can manifest in a very tough life
Oh,
if you
yeah.
don't figure it out, right?
Absolutely. And not feeling, if you have any abandonment issues, you're not going to feel deserving and worthy of much. You're not going to feel enough, good enough. You might not feel safe. You might not know what it's like to even invite in holding or friendship. You might be a loner. You might be putting on a mask to the world. And so people go through this running away from their truth, filling their life either with drugs and alcohol or being a workaholic or a shopaholic or any other holic. And, feeling running until one day something cracks. And then they're like, what on earth? I'm falling all apart. Everything's breaking. So the pandemic, people had to sit with themselves because all of that running away wasn't happening anymore.
Right. Right.
So,
I
yeah.
love that expression, sit with themselves. We're going to spend many, many shows. We're going to work and talk about this. But what I'm really struck by and what I've been struck by in working with you is people go through a lifetime and cannot figure out how in the world, Shannon, did I end up in this pothole today?
Yeah.
But you see, what you just shared by sharing your story gives insight to a beginning to heal, I believe. I want to ask you about that and also ask you about what's our message for people today, because the end game here is to heal all that, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
And we spend a lifetime healing the wrong thing. Now, I don't think there are wrong things to heal, but it's a matter of priorities, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm going to heal this thing right here, but I'm not really going to heal it because I did not get back to the root. And you
Mhm.
are getting back to the root
You,
of the root.
you just said it. Get to the root of what is the issue. So if your parents are still alive, if your mother is still alive, talk to your mother, ask the questions, ask all of the unasked questions. I have a whole list. My list is getting larger of questions you can ask your mother about her birth. Ask about your grandparents. Find out as much as you possibly can about what was going on for your mother when she was pregnant with you, in her relationship, her environment, her surroundings. What was her relationship like with her mother? Find out, because they will even unconsciously start to give you answers of the seeds of your beginnings. Yeah.
You know, I want to talk about the series, the shows that you're going to be doing. And I just want to tell people, for those of you that are just tuning in, I'm hoping that I'm going to get part of that list from Shannon so we can maybe post that list and start to ask
Yeah.
people on social media. Because many of you listening now, I can feel the energy. You're thinking, I ain't asking my mom anything. Really? Did you just say that to us out loud? We didn't hear you, but we heard you. But that's like part of, that's evidence of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Absolutely. I mean, you can get a lot from meditating and asking the questions to your higher self. All of that's useful too. But honestly, if there's any kind of way in with your mother, ask the question. Ask a question. Start
Yeah.
with one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look, I want to know how we find out more about this. I want to know what people can do in scheduling that call with you, and also to get some help, because that's what we're talking about. We're talking about going back to the root. We're not
Mhm.
talking about the band-aid that
Mhm.
most of us have put on our lives. What is the best way, again, for people to do that?
Contact me on my website, shannonbtb.com, and book a 20-minute free mind shift call, and we'll go from there. And soon there will be a From Burden to Brilliance course available, an 8-week online course. It's not quite ready yet because I'm a bit of a perfectionist. So that'll be
Oh my God.
available soon in the new year.
We could, okay, I'm going to put you on the hot seat for one more question.
Okay.
Are you willing to share one of those questions we could ask our mom?
Oh, yeah,
Come on.
absolutely.
All right, now I'm going to change it to three. Give me three.
Three questions. So, how was my birth? Was it good? Was it fun? Was it difficult? How long were you in labor? Did you have any complications? Was I put in an incubator? Did you breastfeed me? How
Yeah,
was your birth with your mother? Oh, like rattle them
I
off the
love it.
page.
But
Yeah.
those are really good starting questions because we go through life and we do not have that intimate conversation with our moms. We don't, Shannon. And
Mhm.
you got to ask yourself why. Why haven't we sat down with our mom? There are some moms that will talk about it, right? Those are the moms that you really don't need to ask the questions when they talk about, oh my God, honey, it was so wonderful to bring you. But if
You
your
still
mom,
need to ask the
you still
questions
thank
because
you.
your birth story is really important. Some are very toxic, but your birth story is very important, and your mother's idea of it. But you want to know deeper than just what happened there. You want to know what was going on for her in her relationship, in her environment, in her health, everything. Did she want a girl? Did she want a boy? You want to know all of that
Yeah.
stuff because though that's where all of the answers to your being lay.
Yes.
Yeah,
And by the way, let's just add this. Just because we're talking to our moms doesn't mean we're not getting a whole family picture.
that's correct. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that thing you just said right there about did your mom want a boy or girl? That right there, understanding that for me, I'm 12 years younger than my sister, and my dad clearly wanted a boy. So
Yeah.
we'll save that little imprint for another show. Shannon, last question. What's your personal message? What would you like to leave us with? And thank you so much for, first of all, for everything you do. And for secondly, for being so passionate about helping people heal the things that they really can't see or don't know much about. Thank you.
Yeah. My message is to really go within and think about what are your repeating patterns in life, because the if you start to connect the dots, you'll see that different circumstances will actually be the same underlying pattern. So start to pay attention Pay attention to your thoughts. Pay attention to what is triggering you constantly all the time, and call me.
I love it. Shannon, website one last time. I can't wait for our next conversation.
Thank you. ShannonBTB.com.
You know, folks, a call, a question with Shannon, it's just the first step, but it's a step to freedom. Thank you for tuning us in and turning us on. We'll see you next time.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pat. It's been a pleasure.
You have been listening to Beyond Birth Trauma, From Burden to Brilliance with Shannon O'Flaherty on Transformation Talk Radio. On the second Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific Time, we connect the dots between your ancestors, your birth, and the patterns that keep you stuck, guiding you to a place of profound healing and unstoppable brilliance. By examining and healing your cellular imprint from birth of how you perceive and respond to the world and the challenges that are created in your day-to-day life, we can begin to heal and live more balanced and fulfilling lives. For more information, visit ShannonBTB.com. That's ShannonBTB.com.